you sell to a private equity firm that not only was brand new, had a new thesis, a new untested thesis, and was buying you at really peak asset prices, right? 2022. For whatever reason, over the next year and a half, they couldn't execute on their vision, probably ran into a bunch of roadblocks. And then he calls you back and just says, we're shutting down. Do you want to buy this company back? And you were able to buy it back. Like, was it a steep discount or was it like the same that you sold it for? Like,
oh yeah, it was steep. I basically bought it back for the inventory cost. They'd paid me the multiple plus inventory when I sold it. And then I basically like bought the inventory back from them at a discount.
Let's do a thought exercise. 5 years from now, you're sitting, bright, sunny day on a beach somewhere in Mexico, enjoying your mojito, thinking about all the things that you've accomplished. You've just sold your business not 2 years earlier, and you're set for life. You finally achieved that financial freedom and security that you had always dreamed of. When all of a sudden your phone rings, it's the buyer. I wonder what they want. Maybe they're going to tell me something good happened. But that's not what happens. In the conversation, you learn that your baby, what you had sold to them, is not doing well. It's flailing. In fact, their strategy for growth is not going the way that they had planned. And you have an option. Do you step in, take back your baby, build it back the way that you always wanted to? Or are you getting into a situation where your millennial 30-year-old child is coming home to get their master's degree? Well, welcome to another episode of Nickonomics. This is the show for entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs who are curious to learn how other businesses work. My name is Nicholas Haluski, and I'm an entrepreneur with multiple seven-figure exits who's owned and operated dozens of companies and created millions of dollars in shareholder value. And on this show, I let my curiosity drive as I get successful entrepreneurs to peel back the curtain and walk me through exactly how their businesses operate. And today, I am joined by Cathryn Lavery. She's the founder of BestSelf Co. She went from an architect to an e-commerce entrepreneur, and Cathryn has built a multi-million-dollar business helping people become the best versions of themselves. What started out as a personal project to manage her own ADHD has grown into a thriving company creating physical tools for productivity, relationships, and personal development. In this episode, you'll discover how Cathryn turned her background in architecture into a thriving e-commerce business and why she believes in the power of analog tools in a digital world. But I'm going to warn you, buckle up, because we go on a ride from founder to seller to distressed buyer. And we really explore all the feelings along the way. You're not going to want to miss this one. Enjoy. Okay, guys, we're going to get back to the show in just 1 second. But first, a message from a sponsor who is me. Oh, it's me because I'm doing the show for free. Listen, I want to give you $100. All you have to do is this. Go to Apple or Spotify. Give me 5 stars. Write a review. Screenshot that review, send it to me, nick@cofounders.com, and you will be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. Every 4 episodes, I am going to choose a winner at random, and I'm going to do this 5 times. $500 for 5 stars. I just made that up, and it's what I'm calling it. Please go to Apple or Spotify, leave a review, screenshot it, send it to me, nick@cofounders.com, and you'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, Cathryn, welcome to Nickonomics. I am stoked to have you. Why don't you give people a background and just briefly explain what your business is and how you make money?
Yeah, so my business is BestSelf Co, and we create tools around productivity, relationships, different areas in your life where you could become the best version of yourself. So I got really into personal development back in like 2012. I used to be an architect. So I come from a very like making buildings background and like making things. And when I got into personal development, I was like, and I also had ADHD, which was diagnosed super late. So I always was like creating these frameworks for myself, do things. I didn't realize at the time I like literally had ADHD. So I'd always have these systems to just be able to like get through my day. Once I got into personal development, I was like, oh my God, why didn't I learn this stuff at school? Like, why am I learning about the powerhouse of a cell when I don't know anything about like, oh, what habits are actually going to make you more successful? And so I dove in the deep end. And then because I had a product design background, I was like, okay, I want to create this product for myself. And so the first product I came out with was called the Self Journal, which was the first like goal-based journal. So you set a goal at the beginning. We show you how to break it down so you hit it in 3 months. And it was like an analog tool because I don't know about you, but my phone's like a productivity app graveyard where I'm like, this is the thing. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, I don't even remember what that app was. And so I'm very into using technology, but also the physical products and like the things on our desk and in our lives are actually the things that we usually get more done if it's like right in front of our face and it's not an app that we can close down. So that's where the business started. And then we got into more relationship products because personally I went through something where I'm like, oh, actually your business can be doing well, but if your personal life isn't where you need it to be, it like doesn't really matter. And so luckily I called the company Best Self, and I did that because I knew like there was possible for expansion. But when the business started, it was like type A, your best self is your most productive self. And now it's more like, who is your best self and how do we help you in different areas of your life?
Okay, so there's two components to it. It's not just the physical product that you have, but there's also an educational component to help draw out your best self, or to help you with goal setting, to help you with organization, to help you like whatever thing is sort of keeping you from your best self.
Pretty much. So we'll just help you benchmark where you are, figure out what's important, and then give you a structure that you could see every day to help you get there. But it's in like, we sell $25, $30 products. So it's not like we're this big training. We're like, how do we make people successful with our product? Because we knew at the beginning, I'm like, if people don't find success with our product, they're not going to come back and rebuy. And that's the key to running a business, is like having people come back time and time again. We've had people using our journal since we launched. So literally 8 years of like, I've had people like send me these stacks, like this is all the journals I bought from you guys. So it's pretty cool seeing, and also seeing people that I've seen use it and where they are now. It's pretty awesome.
Give me an idea of size and scope. What's your top line revenue per year? How many employees do you have? What does your business look like?
That's a good question. So chapter 1 of the business, I actually sold the business to private equity in 2022. I sold it fully and I was bootstrapped. So it was, and I owned the full thing when we sold. And so my team stayed on. At the time, I had about 8 full-time people-ish, and we were doing about 8.2 million a year. We were lean, but we definitely could have been leaner because, you know, one of my customer service people had been with me for 6 years. And so like, she was awesome. I loved her. But if I was like really pushing the profit alone, like I could have got someone for overseas for maybe a third or a quarter of the price, but that's not really what I was trying to do. Especially, you know, I had this core team. And so when I sold the business, there was a 6-month retention. So I paid a 3-month bonus and then they paid a 6-month bonus. And I was like an ambassador for a year, supposedly helping with product and things, but they didn't really ask anything of me. I tried to give them advice. They didn't really take it. And so after 5.5 months, they told me that they were going to be letting everyone go and moving to an agency model, which was fine. That was their prerogative. And so I actually helped my old team get jobs elsewhere with, you know, because I'm like, okay, I want them to find success elsewhere. And actually, I have a friend who runs an e-com company that's way bigger than mine, and he hired like 3 or 4 people that used to be my people.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of like just helped them, went on my way. And then in December I was supposed to get an earn-out for selling. There was like part of the deal that was tied to revenue, and they didn't hit that for a bunch of reasons. That they basically they were like a new private equity holding company. So they were basically like starting their company while also buying brands. So they bought, I believe, 3 brands, including mine. Ours was the first one. And so they're like trying to fly the plane, but also build at the same time. And then even though I had a team, and I wasn't even really working in the business when I sold it, which is why I was able to sort of just walk away. But they took all the autonomy away from the team being able to like do their job. So whereas before it'd be like forecasting and, oh, we need to order this much inventory. Suddenly, like they couldn't order inventory because they didn't have approvals. And so then what should have been handled was delayed by 2 months. And then they didn't have inventory for Q1, which is our biggest quarter. So there's like all these dominoes that just collapsed. So the quarter I sold, so Q4 of 2022, we were up 20% for that Q. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Because they had to hit 90% of gross revenue for me to get my earn-out. And then Q1 was a shit show. I don't know if I can swear, but it was not good. I think we hadn't had a worse one since 2018. We had like way less products. Wow. It was down a lot. So that was when I was like, okay, I'm not going to get this earn-out. And so what happened was the CEO reached out to me in early December of 23 So basically a year and a bit later, and was like, oh yeah, we're actually shutting down the whole firm and selling off the brands that we bought. You're not going to get your earn out, but do you want to buy the company back? That's
Wow.
pretty much how the conversation went. And so things looked different. Like the revenue was down maybe 25%. There was no team left. And so there was a lot of, but there was the brand there and the products there, and there were sales, but there was just a lot of things that were not like they were when I sold it. Like when I sold it, we were, I don't know, 65% direct to consumer and 35% Amazon. And buying it back, they'd sort of only focused on Amazon. And the reason they did that was because this PE firm had hired a bunch of people from Amazon aggregators, essentially. And so like, they're just looking, you know, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. They're like, everything's Amazon. So then they starved out the D2C and moved to Amazon, which is like a less profitable channel. So coming back, the structure and how things looked channel-wise was different. But I got myself a good deal. So I was like, okay, let's roll up my sleeves and do it again.
Let me see if I can just restate what you said. Built a company, going well. You sell to a private equity firm that not only was brand new, had a new thesis, a new untested thesis, and was buying you at really peak asset prices, right? 2022. For whatever reason, over the next year and a half, they couldn't execute on their vision. Probably ran into a bunch of roadblocks. And then he calls you back and just says, we're shutting down. Do you want to buy this company back? And you were able to buy it back. Like, was it a steep discount or was it like the same that you sold it for? Like,
oh yeah, it was steep. I basically bought it back for the inventory cost. They'd paid me the multiple plus inventory when I sold it. And then I basically like bought the inventory back from them at a discount.
So you bootstrapped it. You're by yourself. You owned it 100%. You sold it to them. Did you buy it back 100%? Do you have investors now? Okay. Bought it back 100%. It's really interesting.
I was actually considering taking on someone to run it, but then I actually had a business partner when I first launched it. He left spiritually, mentally, physically in 2018, but not legally until 2020. It was just like really stressful in the business, dealing with business partner issues, especially 50-50, like never do that again. And so when I was considering bringing someone on or maybe looking for investors, this all happened very quickly. Like I put my offer in December with the goal of closing quickly because the price was the price, right? So the longer that they held it, the less inventory I had and the more sales they had. And so my whole thing was like, Valentine's Day is coming up. If I can get it, I can capitalize on that with the inventory I already have, with the goal of like, I want to buy the business back. I don't want to put any more capital into it. I want the sales revenue to be enough to capitalize the business, which I've been able to do. But that was how I was thinking. So when I was considering at first, like getting investors or taking on a partner, I was really like, well, I'm negotiating this deal. I don't want to also negotiate another deal at the same time. So I was like, let me get the business back. I know how to fix things. And then I'm also coming at it from more a position of strength anyway, because like I don't need the money to buy it back. So let me just get it back, get it in a better position, and then it would be worth more as well.
What was it doing at that time? And where you said you're at about 8 million now?
We were at 8.
Oh, you sold it around 8 million in revenue.
Yeah, it was at, I think last year they did 6.7-ish.
Okay. Big drop.
Yeah. And then I'm not like where we're trending right now. We're probably going to do 5-ish.
Interesting.
But it's good because the profit, like I've been running it much differently this time. So like the profit from this year will be more than we made when it was 8.5.
That's awesome.
I'm running it differently this time because I'm thinking of like, I don't really care. Because before it was like, oh, we have to always be growing for like, you know, well, for a few reasons. Like if you're not growing your revenue, it's like, oh, you're failing. What's going on? And I look at it differently this time. It's like before margins were getting tighter and while we were growing, our margins were getting lower and we were actually less profitable. But you're still like, oh, we're doing over 8 million, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't really care about that anymore. And you almost are like, for me, I was like building myself this prison that I had to always be growing. I had this payroll of people that was dependent on me. I also, when I sold, I'd had my first baby. She was 6 months when I sold. And so I hadn't really taken time off Not fully, because even though you can have people running things, you see the news, it's like, oh, is a recession coming? Am I going to have too much inventory? I don't know what's going to happen. And because I'm like bootstrapped, there's no like magic investors in the background. Like that all comes back to me. So even though technically I wasn't in the day to day, I was still mentally dealing with the weight of this company. And so when I sold, there was a lot of reasons I wanted to take time off, do mom life for a bit. I also wasn't sure where the economy was going. I was like, I think it's smart to take money off the table because I'd been constantly reinvesting in it for so long and buying it back. When I first heard, I was like, I don't know if I, like, to be honest, when he first brought it up, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do that. But then I was journaling on like how I would do it differently so that I'm not building myself into this prison that I don't even want. And it would be like when I sold, ChatGPT hadn't come out yet, and I'd spent the sort of year plus, learning how to code and learning how to use AI. I'm like, okay, there's just so much I could do with AI that I wasn't able to do before. And so that was one of the reasons where I was like, I could probably get away with a much leaner team by just being smart with hiring and things like that. And so I kind of put some things in place. And I was always like, look, if I'm buying it back for a percentage of the inventory, I could always just sell through the inventory, potentially sell the company again. So because I got it back at a good deal, there's a lot of options that I could.
You weren't going to necessarily like lose money on the deal as a whole.
Yeah.
Right.
But I was able to get it back on track. I could sell it. But I really, coming back in is like, how do I build a company that's like fun, making things that I enjoy, serving customers correctly, that I could sell in it because everything's set up correctly, but I don't have to sell because I actually like working on it.
I want to circle back to a statement you made like really, really early on, like in our first 30 seconds. You said you had ADHD. So I'm assuming you found the cure.
Oh, no, I still have it.
I'm just kidding. I know it's a joke.
I wish.
I have ADHD as well. And hearing you talk about you always had to build yourself systems and frameworks, I'm the same exact way. And when I meet people and they're like getting to know me for the first time and they see that side of me, they're like, oh, you must be so organized. Oh man, you must be just so good at all of these little pieces. And what I try to tell people is like, no, I like, you don't understand. I need this so that my brain understands how things are supposed to go and I can actually function. So I've always found that part interesting. Did you have the same experience?
Oh yeah. I was like not organized at school. I was thinking back because I didn't get diagnosed till I was like 30. And I remember in school, I had a locker, right? But I would lose my locker key all the time. And if I didn't lose my locker key, I literally had to cut locks. I remember like at least 4 times going to the janitor's thing to get the lock cutter because I would just lose my keys all the time. And then I would also forget what books were for like what class. I'm pretty small, so I would have this like huge backpack because I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to bring all the books all the time. And then I don't have to be like stressed about it. So I was just like not organized. And I would have to come up with these, and I still do it, these like systems to just like, I literally have an app that's connected to my washer dryer because otherwise I'll wash my clothes, I'll forget they're in there, and then I have to rewash them because they've been sitting damp. Yeah. And so now I will like ping my phone like, hey, it's up. And I have so many of those just around the house to just like function like a normal human being. I'm
curious because again, I have ADHD and many times I have epiphanies about myself. I'm like, oh, I'm never going to do that again. And then many times I find myself in the same situation again. What did you do differently when you bought back the company? You said you had been journaling, but what did you do differently where you were able to not build yourself the prison that you had built yourself the first time?
I think we had too many people and we were trying to do too many things, which at the time, like, even though on the scale of 2022 and where we were, because we didn't have investors and we were running off sales and, a line of credit and things like that, it's not like we could be unprofitable for long, but the margins were getting smaller. And so when I was coming back, I was like, okay, what are the basics that we need to be able to like get things done without, it's like, do we need a specialized person for this? I don't think so. And also just like things like, do we need a Shopify developer? No, I don't think so. Because guess what? We have ChatGPT now and you can literally solve and write scripts on there and use themes and all this stuff that was like unnecessary for like 2024 might have been necessary in 2021 when we didn't have as many options. And just getting a small team and then giving them the tools that they needed to be able to do more. So like I constantly am doing something and I'm like, oh, this would actually be helpful to show the team how to use AI differently. And then I'll record a video and then I'll share it. Like now we have a shared prompt thing so that I'm like showing them how to be thinking about things so that they can do more, which just wasn't possible before. And so now things that, and also just minutia of like dumb things that ADHD, I would either like pay tax on by ignoring it, or I would hand it off to someone else. And now I can literally like deal with it in 5 or 10 minutes with ChatGPT or Claude or something like that. And so that itself keeps me from feeling like I'm in a prison, because I'm like, God, I have to deal with all these like paperwork and sales tax and like all this stuff that like really bogs me down from like the creative work that I really want to be doing.
Your business right now, how do you acquire customers? Where are they coming from?
We have more organic now than we used to because we've been focusing on organic content. We also do Facebook ads, Google ads, and we're starting to do TikTok. Or we do TikTok, but we don't get a ton of like things that we can track on there. So I don't know if I would count that right now. And then Amazon is a big channel.
Do you have any idea what your customer acquisition cost is? Like how much it costs you to acquire one customer?
It costs 20, 25.
Okay.
Depends on the product and what we're trying to sell. But to be honest, like because we have low price products, it is difficult to spend what we used to on, because again, I want to be making money on every sale instead of losing money on the first sale. And we've actually generally historically been pretty good, but it's gotten very difficult. And so to be honest, we haven't like, our sales are lower than they used to be, but I've been focused on like, look, if it's not profitable on the first sale, like I don't want to do it right now. And again, this is like a quieter season for us. So Q1 and Q4 are biggest. And so I've actually been using Q2 and Q3 to get the business like structurally back on track and develop some products that we have coming out so that Q4 and like building up the assets for marketing and things like that, so that when we're ready, we can spend more on marketing in a way that makes sense. I don't want to be like spending a bunch in the quarters we're like quieter, when generally and historically Q4 and Q1 are. So I'd rather save some dry powder for then.
Yeah, for your busy season, essentially. What are your net margins?
My goal for the company is like 20% margin.
Okay.
For the year.
It's just really hard to grow organically when you're trying to stay profitable, right? And everything's just being poured back into the business. Talk to me about like, what are your current offerings? So like I get the journaling products. You said you have some community things. It sounds like you have, I don't know, some type of education piece. Are there different verticals that you sell into?
We're mostly physical products. That's 95% of our revenue. So we sell little card deck games. We sell journals, essentially a lot of paper products we sell. So whether it's like productivity or games for your relationship with you and your kids, we have icebreaker decks. We have the intimacy deck, what I would consider like Trojan horses of personal development. So it's like you come in, you're like, okay, I want to connect with my wife or my kid more. And so rather than create an app, it's like, how do we get people away from their phones and just have something in their environment that they can pick up and have a good conversation, which is helpful with cards because you don't know how much inner voices you get if someone was just to ask you one of these questions yourself. So if I was to ask you one of these questions and you don't know what's coming from a card, in your mind, you're like, oh, why is she asking me that? What does it mean? And so there's all these like defense mechanisms like people in relationships can come up with that actually gets in the way of this having a like real vulnerable conversation. And so one thing that the card games that we've come up with is like it allows people to be more open because they don't feel like there's an ulterior motive to the question.
Where do you sell into? What are your sales channels? Are you all direct to consumer e-commerce? Are you trying to sell into, I don't know, Walmart and Target and some of these big box stores?
We sell at Barnes and Noble, Uncommon Goods, some like small retailers, but mostly and then we sell on Amazon. And then we also sell like teams will buy it, like corporate companies will buy it for their teams, but those are more like wholesale options.
Why is there a love-hate relationship in e-commerce with Amazon?
I think it's Amazon. First of all, they just increase their fees all the time. It's also like one thing I dealt with right after I got the company back was we were dealing with like counterfeiters where like people had like ripped off our product, but it was like these like shitty versions. So it's like spelling mistakes all over and trying to get them off so like on Amazon, you might create a product from scratch. You're the only distributor for the product. You put it on Amazon, but then other people are like, oh, I also sell this. And so Amazon's whole thing is like they want to get the customer the best possible price. And so let's just say you were selling like Tide Pods. You could have gone to Walmart or the dollar store and gotten like a bunch of that like that whole retail arbitrage. So that is actual Tide Pods that were bought. But then there's a lot of products that they just like basically copy and even if you have trademarks, like you just have to be like on it to be able to protect your brand. And so that's one reason. It's like you have all these like Chinese sellers, like gaming reviews. They'll either buy a product that's nothing with high reviews, and then they'll sell a completely different product, like fake reviews, all this stuff. And then if Amazon shuts them down, they'll just launch another one the next day.
But the onus is really on you as the business owner to prove to Amazon you are the original, not the counterfeit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of US sellers, because they're dealing with Amazon, like this is their like livelihood and their company, and they have to stick by like specific rules, whereas like you have a lot of Chinese manufacturers coming on the platform that like if Amazon throws them off, they'll be back tomorrow with another name and just start again. And like Amazon's making money either way. And so actually Amazon have invented this thing it's like transparency code, and it's this little QR code looking thing. And basically if that's on the product, then only products coming into FBA with that little code will be accepted. And so it's funny because you almost have it like, oh, they're the mob that they created this problem. And they're like, actually, now you have to pay like 5 cents a unit for this little code to be able to sell your own product legitimately and making sure nobody else gets it. And so there's just stuff like that where you just don't know when the tides are going to turn with them.
I have some rapid fire questions for you. Is that okay?
Yep.
All right. First question. If you were starting over, you knew everything that you knew right now, and you're starting over from scratch, what business would you do?
As a cliche, I'd probably do something with AI, but not in the tech forward way. I'd just go to like a really profitable niche that's old school and like does things slowly and figure out how to make them save a ton of time or make more money with AI. And I would just do that.
Probably something with a lot of human input, documentation, conversation. Like I think a lot about healthcare and documentation of the patient record. Like you were talking about Claude. Yeah. Claude has a really good model.
Yeah. Actually, I was out with a friend who's a ER doctor, and he was telling me how much he uses AI for like helping him like with patient notes and things like that. And the health space, there's so much money and like small little niches in that. I've heard of an AI company that's basically in like a doctor's office. You'll have these people in charge of coding to be able to, and then you have to call the insurance company, and it's like they're basically talking to a robot with these codes. And so now they have this program where it's like AI robots talking to AI robots, and now you're saving a whole person's salary that used to be spending like on the phone, and now they're doing something that's much more high leverage. So just things like that.
I used to own a medical billing and medical practice management company, so very familiar. Nice. Very familiar.
Would you get back into it now that you could like 100%. Do stuff like that?
Yeah, 100%. I'd get back into it. I think, like you were saying, I think AI is going to eliminate a lot of jobs for sure. But I also think it's going to be really high leverage. So it's going to make that coder now able to do 10 times the amount of work that they were able to do without artificial intelligence. So I'm a big proponent of it. I think it's fantastic. I also think it's going to improve outcomes. Anyways, so yes, I would get back into it. I think it's a great space. I can't because I sold it to PE and I have a non-compete for 3 more years. But
I think architecture, so I come from an architecture background. That's another thing where it's like now with AI models and a lot of what we learn in architecture school, like that could be unfortunately done with AI because like, okay, I want, this is the location, this is the site plan, here's the sun map on it and where light comes in. I want you to, like, you can come up with like endless options for floor plans based on all that in different themes almost instantly.
I think that's a really interesting potential use case where you just upload all of your plans, drafts, designs, whatever. And because it will get multimodal at some point. Right now it's language, but it will get multimodal. And then it's able to spit you out a first draft of what you might do that then allows you to build off of. Like people who are using it in the creative space to write right now, they're getting first drafts spit off all the time. But design, man, that would be a really interesting use case for it. It's like, hey, here's all my past designs. Here's what I'm into. Spit me out a first draft.
You could also license like, Frank Lloyd Wright's entire history of everything he's designed. And so then you're like essentially getting these masterpieces done in the same, like, and you're also interviewing, if you could put all of their interviews of Frank Gehry and Le Corbusier and all these people where it's like gathering all the info and then you just feed it and be like, it's just like endless.
Like Frank Lloyd Wright as the example, you could go and say, here is where he went to school and this was the curriculum at the time, uploaded. Boop.
Yeah.
Here is his first job and here's every design he ever did. Boom, uploaded. Here are all the interviews he ever did. Boom, uploaded. And then go to a, I don't know, raw piece of land and say, design me a house over the stream in the fashion of Frank Lloyd Wright. That would be really freaking cool.
Because things like that is pretty insane. And it would also see if because architects, there's a lot of time wasted on, you're doing these details of a wall, but if you could load them in from something that exists already, I mean, they already have that a lot with XREFs and stuff, but there's just so much possibility that would take on a lot of like grind work of, like, I remember once when I was an intern, I was like an intern after someone else who was a terrible intern. It was awesome for me because it made me look way better. And so I guess one of the last projects they gave this guy was like, count the amount of parking spaces that you can get into this space because we have to get so many in for like building regs or whatever. And so he's like, oh yeah, I was able to get the amount in that we needed. And they're like, really? Oh, that's the relief because like we didn't think that was possible and we're gonna have to make some shifts. He's like, yeah, I mean, they didn't fit at first, but then I just made them all smaller. And so rather than, he was like an early LLM. Now you could have AI just come up with 10 different versions of how a car park could work, which is just such a drudgery if you're an architect, like having to do that stuff.
Well, in healthcare, here's a specific use case that I'm working on right now. I don't know if you knew this, but did you know that there's two types of PDFs?
Like a Photoshop PDF and an Acrobat PDF?
Yeah. So the way I understand it is like one PDF is created in HTML. So it like maps to a website. Another PDF is just a picture, essentially. So somewhere in the ballpark of like 75% of PDFs are those HTML mapped PDFs, 25% are these pictures. Well, if you can imagine in healthcare, if you can take a PDF and even Control F, I'm going to find date of birth or diagnosis, and you can find those things really quickly. Well, 25% of these PDFs you can't do that in because it's not mappable. Well, with artificial intelligence, we can now map it. We can now map those PDFs and read them so they're searchable, they're savable. You can pull in that information without it having to be re-entered by a human being into the system. That now, again, 25% of all work can now be done with artificial intelligence. So that's just one use case of artificial intelligence coming in and taking the job of some human that now they can focus on higher use cases as opposed to re-entering in codes from an unreadable PDF.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of manual, boring jobs that will not be needed anymore. But I think it leaves space for people. Like, I don't know anyone that's like, oh, I love doing that. The only people that love doing that is if they can listen to a podcast at the same time and get through their day. But imagine they did something that like lit them up and they were excited to do.
Man, I want to do another whole separate podcast with you on just riffing on AI ideas.
Yeah,
because our ADD minds and our interest in AI, I think we could do some. I don't know that anybody else would listen to it, but I think we would find a lot of fulfillment in riffing on those ideas.
Yeah, nobody else wants to listen. Like my wife's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, same. What industries are you the most jealous of right now?
Most jealous of?
Or business models, business types, businesses.
Oh, business models. I mean, if I was starting over, I've been doing e-commerce for so long, but it's a tough business model because you're dealing with inventory and physical product, and you have to have this like wide array of knowledge about different things. I don't know anything that's more wide ranging than just dealing with e-com because you touch on so many different things. So like software, and I think that's to continue on the AI thing, like I think because software is going to get easier to make, that's going to go away a little bit. But I definitely am jealous of like the margins on software.
I think I know what you're obsessed with right now because we just talked about artificial intelligence. So I'm going to skip to my last question. What advice would you give to yourself 10 years ago?
When I first moved to the US, I like was making $30,000 a year as an architect with a master's degree. And so one of the things I worked on was like, okay, how do I just get skills and grow myself? Because then I can potentially do other things. And so I think a lot of people are like, oh, I don't know where I'm supposed to be in life. It's like, okay, just learn useful skills. So there's Scott Adams has a really good book, and it talks about how to fail at almost everything and still win big. It's a really good book. And he's talking about like these random things that he failed at. And then he was just like good at humor. He was like half decent artist, but not very like cartoonist. And he had a corporate background. And so he created Dilbert. And so I look at like, what skills could you get? So I started learning copywriting, and I knew how to do design and products. And so if you're not making much in your job, how do you become really good at AI and ChatGPT? And really just like, you don't have to do that much to be able to like learn how to use it so that you could apply it to an industry that's not doing anything. And so if I was to go back 10 years ago, it's like, that's pretty much what I did, was just like learn skills that were valuable in the marketplace. And if you're learning things where almost nobody has the same skill, like an architect that like learns copywriting, knows design, and also can like physically make things like products, buildings, like whatever, like that is only a specific skill set of people that like can read personal development books, come up with an idea in their head and like actually create it within a couple of days. Like for a long time, I was trying to replace myself in my business of someone that could like, I'm not going to give them a brief. They're just literally going to come up with ideas and then also be the same person that can make it come to life. And that's actually much more difficult. So I don't know if I like answered your question, but
you did. No, good answer. Learn valuable skills, apply them in the marketplace.
Talent stack.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Great conversation. Where is the best place for people to come find you?
Every product I've talked about, you can find on BestSelf.co. And I talk about everything on the behind the business on littlemight.com.
Okay. Awesome. Can't wait to check in with you in a year and see you be a $50 million business.
Awesome. From your lips to God's ears.
Something like that. Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Dick.
All right. That's it. Another one for the books. I'm fired up. I don't know what else to say. I hope you found something valuable in that conversation. I hope you learned something. I hope there's something that you can apply to your business today, tomorrow, in the future that makes you money, makes you more successful, gives you more time with your kids. If there was something, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Give me some feedback. And if you like actionable advice and you want more of this, I write a weekly newsletter that gives insights, tips, and tricks into the world of entrepreneurship. Subscribe in my bio. And if I can help you in any way in your entrepreneurial journey, don't hesitate to reach out to me, nick@cofounders.com. Sorry, Kelly, for more emails. And the last thing is, remember, curiosity is a superpower and you can use it to your advantage. As my mom used to say, there's no such thing as a dumb question, only dumb people. We'll see you next time.